Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another live stream of Shadowverse. The new expansion is here. I think we've already mentioned that in the previous recording. It's important to me to mention that in the previous recording, one of my regular fans, Level by Level Gaming, posted into the chat, and my chat was messed up, so I did not see his post. So I want to first and foremost address his question, as it was an actual question. He asked, how did you decide on this news and gameplay format? Does anyone else, such as a big YouTubers, do it? Question mark. How did I decide? It's best described as laziness, I guess. Like, I don't know how you describe it as anything other than a mix between trying to be efficient and trying to be lazy. That's where it comes from, because at the beginning of me being a YouTuber, I was like, I think many YouTubers and many video game players in general, watching a lot of YouTube videos from places like Giant Bomb, and listening to a few podcasts that would occasionally talk about video games also. And I still do a decent amount of that, but I've kind of phased away from that. In fact, I kind of regret how much I just was watching of Giant Bomb in particular, because their opinions really guided me to buy several games that then I came back and felt they had just overhyped because they were friendly or directly friends with the game creators, and they weren't as good of games as they've been hyped up to be. Of course, I am also a critic, so I find most games have some severe flaws. I would argue that the video game industry is not just overflowing with perfect games and even great games. They are always getting better than video games, but there's a lot of garbage out there. A lot of garbage that is even there, even well selling. So, in an effort to diversify my news sources, and this was also slightly influenced by the fact that I was also at some point, and I don't get too much into politics, if ever. I was watching a lot of CNN, and over the past, let's say 12 years or so, it's been fairly obvious that CNN has just evolved into a highly politicized news source that just every day, 24/7, talks about the same political talking points over and over and over again, and it's just repetitive, and it's dull, and it's just not giving you any new information. And so that also influenced my thought patterns of, hey, I need different news sources. I need less yellow journalism, less propaganda, just in my life in general on any topics. And so I wanted to find some new news sources like that, and I wanted to get away from Giant Bomb, who really wasn't reviewing games anyways, or even looking at video games in an honest perspective. They are very much won't even call themselves video game journalists anymore. If they ever did, they sell themselves as personalities. They're playing games and selling the people who are playing the games as personalities, who occasionally give an opinion, and often those opinions aren't even very informed or well thought out. So Eurogamer, PC Gamer, Kotaku, eventually, those were the first few websites I started following on Twitter. I made a Twitter as part of being a YouTuber, and Twitter made it very easy to create a collection of places where you get video game news instead of RSS feeds, which is what I was using before, which there's no easy way to have open conversations. Well, there's absolutely no way to have an open conversation with an RSS feed. It is simply just a newspaper telling you what you want to hear, where Twitter, at least, there's a possibility that you might get somebody who puts a comment that would be somewhat of an open conversation on Twitter. So eventually, because of in part, a very small part, the after effects, like a year plus after the events of Gamergate, it became fairly obvious that a lot of the places like Kotaku and Eurogamer and PC Gamer were all being run by the same people, or at least the same like-minded people who were colluding in the background to effectively control the narrative, or they were just websites that were nothing but advertisements. And see, I don't want this explanation to come off as too conspiratorial, but yeah, that's pretty much mainstream video game journalism. It's kind of trash. It became fairly obvious that it was kind of trash. I wanted to address the issue that Western video game journalists basically blackball all Japanese games and all news about Japanese games. So that's where we got to Gamatsu. TechRaptor originally sold itself as being a fairly non-political, or perhaps maybe even a little bit more to the right website, and they mostly stay within that bounds, although they sometimes do some ridiculous things, and they certainly have a lot of sponsorships and talking, hyping up of games as previews, which I kind of would like to see the elimination of game previews if you don't have actual facts behind it, such as what is the release date, what platforms is it gonna be on, things like that. Because if you're just talking about a game and showing off screenshots and you've got nothing of value there, like nothing that's actionable, like I can't even begin to care about a game if it turns out that game is going to be on the Switch because I don't own the Switch. I can't even care about a game if it turns out a game is going to be on the Epic Store exclusively because I'm not going to buy an Epic Store exclusive. I can't even begin to care about a game if you're going to talk about it now, but it's coming out 2 years from now, because there's just far too many games. So yeah, I eventually boiled it down to Gamasutra, which definitely is left-leaning, but they have job listings, which is an interesting perspective, and they do have some industry insider information, so you kind of have to live with it. Although Gamasutra also does have a problem in which its parent company also owns GDC, so you get a lot of reposts from GDC presentations and cross-promotion of GDC, and you definitely get a lot of pro video game company messages. TechRaptor is a little bit right-leaning, and Gamatsu is a little bit Japanese, is heavily Japanese focused. And those are my three major sources for news. I've been on the lookout for some other major sources of news, but there frankly aren't that many that I've seen. It's kind of, you're still kind of in a closed conversation with TechRaptor. You're not gonna find other people to follow with all the ad blocks I have turned on Twitter. So I haven't been suggested to follow pretty much anybody on Twitter, which is fine. Which also makes my experience on Twitter very much different from what most people do, and I can kind of understand why at this point most individuals wouldn't bother to make a Twitter account, because it really is just about following celebrities and celebrities posting, and I'm a very, very, very low level celebrity, I suppose, and that's how I run my own Twitter account. But yeah, I don't know if I get any views from it at all. As for the second part of that response, are there any other big YouTubers that do this? No, absolutely not. I have never seen any other YouTuber do it. I will say PewDiePie goes on his own subreddit forum to catch up on things that are PewDiePie related and that his audience are following with his Lawai. And the Lawai, I believe, is him copying something Jacksepticeye also did. But there's no real honest desire in what PewDiePie does to get actual news or to actually inform PewDiePie much. It's just to create engagement with his audience, and so I imagine there are a lot of people that get news, certainly, and they don't do it publicly, but that's a really inefficient way to do things. The second part of the reason, of course, is I like collectible card games to a certain extent. There are some parts I kind of hate about them. I will grant you that much, but I'm going to replace this Dragoncraft since we've had so much trouble playing Dragoncraft. Thinks Portalcraft is much more durable. This Battle Pass, by the way, has not reset, so they're waiting until the next expansion happens. But what did happen is, as we're talking about the game, is I did do the solo stuff. So I have a couple more tickets. Now I have 9 tickets for when this comes out in 11 hours. So we'll just talk about that on Wednesday. Frankly, I don't want to do a special video. Yeah, and I guess I'm just not going to get these pre-release bonuses, which this might be the point where you get killed in being a free-to-player in this game, is that you may just never get this card as an option, or this card back as an option, or this animated card back, which seems redundant. And this is the first time I've ever seen an option to get fractions of a seer stone. So, but I feel like you probably would have had to buy 10 or 100 packs in total, and it must have been 10 because you could have only bought 30 in the pre. Well, maybe you can only buy 30 with the free currency, and maybe you could have bought 100 packs with the premium currency. Anyways, yeah, I like to play collectible card games, and so this gives me an excuse to play the collectible card games more often than would be legitimate. It also was a factor of YouTube wanting you to stream. I don't know if it has helped my channel one bit to stream, but YouTube was heavily promoting live streaming when they thought Twitch was a competitor. Now at this point, I don't think they think Twitch is a competitor, and they've really kind of backed off on promoting it. This is inherently how YouTube is your boss, that pretends like it isn't your boss, in the fact that they just tell you to do things, and that your channel, they imply heavily your channel will succeed if you do these things. And it's pretty much not true, because nothing you do is going to make your channel succeed. This level is still under maintenance. And they're taking their sweet time to finish that. I managed to play a little bit more of the single player too, as I'm trying to upload videos and such, but I took a break and played this. So I cleared this story and I cleared this story, which gave me a pack for each of those. I think it's worth mentioning though that none of these stories have any challenges in them, really. And in the sense that the first chapter is just text, second chapter is text, third chapter is text, fourth chapter is text, fifth chapter gives you an event, and I think it's just text. This is an actual challenge on the sixth one. that may have been a challenge on the 7th one. That's text. This was a challenge. This was a challenge. And that was text. So out of 11, there were really only 3 battles in total. And I feel like they're going to go back and add more challenges. Either that or they've just kind of realized that there's no reason for challenges to exist. Because in previous expansions, like even when you're talking about the previous expansion, this is a challenge where you have to fight. That probably was text. That was probably text. That's all. Well, actually, I can't tell. That's a challenge. And the rest of those were text. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. That's text. That's text. So you're talking at least 6 of the 11 levels in episode 9 were challenges, where it was really closer to 3. So yeah, the alternative, if I didn't do this, let's see, I guess I should check to see what Open 6 would do here. I don't think we do Open 6 right now. Because if I do Open 6, there's going to be 5 packs from the 4 latest sets, which by my guesstimate is not going to include the pre-release. Where, let's see, Open 2 until you have 30 cards. But if I do take 2, then I don't keep the cards. Let's see. It does seem like they've put up some levels. Challenge Master 14 Fortune. Season ends pretty quickly too. 5 victories, 5-0 victories, 15 5-0 victories. Wow. So that's quite a lot. So we are in this weird position where there's not a lot to do today. So let's just open a pack. I've got a ticket, so we'll do that. Yeah, if I wasn't to do the live streams like I did it, I would just be playing the collectible card game. And there definitely would have been times when I was playing Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, and even now there's a high possibility that there would have been times where I would have just not bothered to stream on certain days. Like, there's not enough of a motivating factor, really, that was kind of nothing. There really isn't enough of a motivating factor for me to stream and play, and there's literally nothing for me to talk about if I'm not up to date on the news. Like, that's the reason why I'm in part seeking out the news, other than the other fact that I need to just be informed myself. So the news is vital to fuel. It is the gasoline to the live streams. Without it, there's no way I would have anything to talk about, and it would be a very, very dull experience. It would be an incredibly silent, laid back experience that I don't think anybody would really enjoy, and it would certainly have me feel like, why am I doing this instead of just pre-recording footage? Before the live streams and all of that, I was just pre-recording footage, and I had 3 or 4 different shows airing in 3 or 4, sometimes up to 5 different time slots on every weekday. And that wasn't working for YouTube either, because YouTube really only promotes up to 3 things you do in a day. You only get 3 notifications, and and they weren't really telling people that that was the case. Ideally, I would want to simply be just like a TV channel and have a prime time, and in that prime time either have 6 30-minute shows or 3 1-hour shows, or maybe 4 1-hour shows and 8 30-minute shows, or some mix in between there. And then I could pre-record everything, but at that point I would have no time to actually follow any of the news stories, which occasionally people on the chat do ask me, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about that? And there have been a couple times where I'm like, I haven't even heard about that. Now, a ton of video game news is not important news. It's just straight up not news at all. It's just hype. It's just announcements for announcements for announcements and things like that. But I'm actively trying to stay within whatever actual video game community actually exists, and stay within what the general zeitgeist of video gamers are thinking and saying. So I do kind of want to be informed. So yeah, it doesn't help. Like, more recently, in the past 6 months or so, I was a little burned out, and there was a level of there definitely was a level of less pre-recorded footages being done. With October coming up, that's my reset point, because there's just so many horror games, and so we got 2 or 3 pre-recorded horror games scheduled, and I'm moving the schedule forward from that to have 2 or 3 things air every weekday. But I can't really justify having a 3rd thing air on a weekday unless I somehow got rid of the live streams, because live streams definitely are not promoted. Well, nothing is promoted on YouTube, but live streams after the fact are definitely not promoted, unless you're really, really big. So, as like a content creator, so that's another reason to make sure notifications go out, or at least hope that notifications go out if you have any chance of that, for live streams. And so I've just kind of gotten in a habit of doing the things the way I have been doing them, and doing the things the way I want to do them. One of the reasons I definitely run my channel the way I run it, instead of just being a desperate person who's trying to copy other YouTubers to try and get as many views as possible, is because if I'm just desperate for YouTube views, it's because I'm just desperate for money. If I'm just desperate for money, then I'm not focused on actually just sharing my own opinions or making a quality product, and I just don't want to go down that route. Like, at a certain point, I am vehemently and aggressively uninterested in my YouTube channel turning into a job, in the pejorative sense. Like, if it's something I'm not happy about, if it's not something I want to do, then I don't want to do it. I've worked too many jobs where I've done dull, monotonous, repetitive actions and been poorly paid for doing those dull, repetitive, monotonous actions, and that's just not something I would want to see my own creation in my YouTube turn into. So yeah, I'm continuing to live stream the way I want to live stream, which is different. The closest equivalent to the way I live stream would be something like who would be a good comparison. Well, I'll just have to name some of the ones I follow on YouTube. There is a channel, I believe, called Game Ranks that if I'm remembering correctly, is run by somebody who has their own small little indie game company that I don't know if that means anything really, or if they're really gonna ever have their game come out or anything like that. But what Game Ranks does is they do the research, they get the stories from other people. They're not a first-party journalist in the same way I'm not a first-party journalist. None of the information I would ever be able to supply would be from me having sources and talking to people. That is all incredibly insular and just directly owned by mainstream video game journalism.
It's the small things in life.
But Game Ranks does their research and makes a 5 to 10 minute video talking about the entire week's worth of news, and that works for them because then they are this short, brief this brief daily video of telling you what happened.
I'll be home soon.
And that's in the form of news, probably appreciated by a lot of people. It's your evening news where you get maybe half an hour of news and then 10 minutes of weather type experience. Whereas me live streaming is somewhere closer to a middle ground between a daily, we did all the research, we cut it down to a 1 sentence soundbite experience, and a 24-hour news thing. In a weird way, I guess I would kind of describe myself kind of like one of the AM radio channels in too, because it is all off the cuff. It's not scripted, it's not thought through. There's no editor that's telling me talk about this. The only editor is the one in my head, and he doesn't do a very good job. So that's kind of what we're trying to get, is initial reactions, instant reactions. Sometimes those instant reactions are bad reactions. Sometimes I do just take things differently. Like, for instance, there was a company suing YouTube, and then YouTube countersued this company, and I was watching a video talking about it, and while watching the video, and YouTube makes all these claims that the other company is just committing fraud and trying to abuse the legal system to get access to Content ID, to then abuse that. I still in my head am thinking, I don't believe a word YouTube says. Like, I totally would believe any random stranger's word over YouTube at this point, because they've been so dishonest and so inconsistent that any claim that any lawyer from YouTube makes, I would say, okay, so this is the lie you're going with? They've lost all credibility because of just how badly YouTube has treated its content creators, how badly it treats its viewers. Have you noticed all those new ads lately? Yeah, that's YouTube. That's YouTube in itself causing those ads to happen. That's not something that's not an option they allowed the creators to choose. It's an option they forced on creators automatically. If I was a bigger YouTuber, I wouldn't be surprised. If I was a bigger YouTuber, I wouldn't be surprised if other people did kind of steal this idea. But you do run into the problem of collectible card games are pretty much the only kinds of games that are slow enough. You could do a jigsaw puzzle game, and you could go very slow and do kind of an ASMR or news type experience. But if you're talking first-person shooting and high-action games, I don't think there's many people out there that could mentally focus enough to both play something like Fortnite and talk about what's going on in the news. I can barely half the time even keep my focus divided, and frankly, I might be a little ADHD, or in a sense, in that I can somewhat badly multitask. So it might be a case that there aren't that many people that can do two things at once even as well as I do it, and I don't even do it that well. So the idea of jumping between talking about video game news and playing a game at the same time might be just kind of impossible. Normally what you would see is you would have some pre-recorded footage or a video loop of footage playing in the background as someone is either in a sound booth recording a scripted dialogue or talking off the cuff.
Just don't.
There is also a certain level of for lack of a better term, expertise. I guess there's just really isn't a lot of competition around that phrase, around the open broadcast software and how I set it up. So there aren't that many people out there that can figure out how to schedule the scenes the way I have done it. In particular, that is because the people who would be smart enough to get the scenes to do the web peak are probably not, like for instance this web peak here. The people that could program OBS to do this probably don't use web peak, don't use OBS. They use more expensive hardware based solutions, which like the Blackmagic video producing boards and things are extremely expensive, and frankly I don't know if they're actually as good as they should be, because they kind of have this limited split audience nowadays where you can get video boards that are designed basically for churches that are cheap enough that you could sell it to a church but can only do maybe 1080p 30, or you have extremely expensive boards that are designed for football games that could do potentially 4K or 8K at 120 hertz or higher, but then they come into very weird TV, NTSC, or PALS formats and connections, and just the actual plugs on the back of the board have really nothing anywhere close to what you would see on a PC. So small fry video game content creators are not driving any innovation there. So OBS is the right solution. There might be an argument for having a capture device or a second computer capture the video output of a first computer if you really wanted to get crazy. But even at that, I still think OBS is really the option. But yeah, because people wouldn't by default be able to do the web peak. It's not like there's just some wizard in OBS to set up the web peak. That was an extra day of effort on my part, and a lifetime of background in computer programming to know what a computer might be able to do and what I would want the computer to do, whether that was a valid desire or not, or worth the time. And I just have this general predilection to tinker. Like I spent a couple hours just over the weekend setting up my router to act as a network time protocol server and forwarding all requests for network time to my router, because a couple days previous of that, the internet went down for like an hour, and or time.windows.com at least went down for an hour, and I didn't want that to. I'm just gonna stick with Forcecraft for the time being, since we're on a win streak. So my computer was way off, which caused a small problem in that one of the recordings I made, which are automatically named by date and time, was put in the wrong order, but I think I caught it. Although, frankly, little errors on my channel as far as when things are scheduled and maybe even episodes going out of order seem to be going up, and me caring seems to be going down.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
I imagine over the 8,000 videos that I have on my channel now, there's quite a few little bugs and errors that people could find and point out if they wanted to, and I could try to make some adjustments there, but I'm not really too bothered by it these days. So, yeah. Hopefully that answers the question to as best as I can to level by level gaming. Again, I want to apologize for not responding to you. I did not intentionally ignore you. There is something about the YouTube chat, the way I have it, where I send it to a different page on my cell phone so I can read it. When that disconnects and reconnects, it doesn't actually reconnect in a way that I could see the chat messages. So I did not see that until I had already finished the stream and looked at the chat box that was still open on my computer. I could fix that with a third monitor, which is not a high priority, but it is something that is on the tables, certainly. I am inherently just needing more and more monitors for my computer. Although, when I want to get down to the nitty gritty and play big AAA graphic games, I pretty much am still going to have to turn off any secondary monitors. Because those games don't support those very well. I suppose it is also worth mentioning that there is absolutely no guarantee and pretty much no proof whatsoever that my style of doing things is the right way to do it as far as video game news and Shadowverse. It's just the way I want to do things. I very possibly am just being an idiot, and I very possibly would have had way more views if I just silently played Shadowverse, which there probably is an audience out there that would want to just see silent gameplay of Shadowverse, but those wouldn't be my audience by any means, because if they don't want to hear my opinions, then they're not interested in me. Streaming like this also gives me the opportunity to go on rants and talk about things that I then don't end up going on those rants so much in pre-recorded footage, and the pre-recorded footage tends it is my desire that the pre-recorded footage tends to be more focused simply on the game that I'm actually playing.
Hey, let's play.
why I'm less interested in the footage of Shadowverse being all on Shadowverse, because there's only so much I could say about Shadowverse. It's a collectible card game. Some of the cards are good, some of the cards are bad. Things change and then the lineup and the rotation enough that there's not too much to say, but there is a little bit that you could say there. There probably also would be a small audience of people who would just want to see me drop Shadowverse completely because they have no care about collectible card games, or perhaps they have no care about Shadowverse, or perhaps they have no care about looking at any games whatsoever that have anime girls as the characters, which at a certain point my channel is, my live streams in particular have been heavily focused around Japanese focus games and anime girl games, talking about them and mentioning them at least, not particularly playing too many of them, or frankly any of them. But so I could see somebody that would just want video game news. That didn't work the way I'd liked, but whatever. I'll use an evolution to fix my mistake there. Like, if you wanted to be disingenuous, you could call my live streams just a intentionally designed platform to allow me to rant and just get it out of my system. That would be a somewhat accurate disingenuous thing. Mean way of putting it, but somewhat accurate nonetheless. I suppose I don't mention it too much, but there is a group of, at best you could call them dirty comedians slash shock jocks, called the Drunken Peasants, which was, at the time that I was watching it, a character called the Amazing Atheist and his brother Scotty. They're not usually titled that, but yeah. And then there was a comedian who went by Ben Pie, and then eventually they introduced another character named Paul's Ego, and they would just go through the internet and report on the news somewhat, but then a lot of what they were reporting on was just YouTube drama. Amazing Atheist started his career as making atheism videos refuting legitimate honest Christian videos, but eventually it boiled down to just making fun of crazy people who tried to proselytize as Christians but did it in such a terrible way that it was questionable whether even the videos themselves originally were legitimate videos or whether it was just people pretending to be crazy as a kind of false flag operation. And there was a lot of that, but yeah, there was this YouTube channel called the Drunken Peasants. It still exists, but it's no longer anything what it once was, and it really has just turned into something closer to Howard Stern in its heyday, as far as a kind of shock jock thing. The more interesting people, in my opinion, Paul's Ego, Scotty, and the Amazing Atheist, who changed his name fairly frequently and went back to his just real name of TJ Kirk. They now have a podcast called Deep Fat Fried, and and they kind of had a little bit of a nasty breakup with Ben Pie. I don't know if how much of that was played up for kayfabe wrestling reasons, which they were big into, really, but they now do Deep Fat Fried, which is more pre-scripted content for the most part, but they do have some news they talk about, but they just talk about news. They've dropped the part on Deep Fat Fried about talking about crazy people on the internet, which is all that Drunken Peasants was moving towards. So that maybe was an influence too. I don't like to talk about it too much because frankly it's pretty dirty, it's pretty controversial stuff. It's not for everyone by far. But yeah, that kind of Howard Stern comedic off the cuff style of entertainment may have influenced my decision to be off the cuff here too. But I'm definitely not going for comedy. I don't think anybody would ever accuse me of trying to be comedic. But yeah, I'm definitely not trying to pre-script anything either. Let's talk about video game news at this point, because I think I've probably over-explained myself at this point. Let's see, I'm seeing a tweet here from 5 hours ago getting, I guess, updated. That Yakuza 7 is coming to the PlayStation 5 on March 2nd with a free upgrade for PlayStation 4, which I feel like that announcement was completely denied when it was leaked out just a week ago, which is kind of ridiculous. A lot of people also have gotten hands-on previews of the Xbox Series X and are putting out videos like Digital Foundry, for instance, talking about that stuff. But I would say that we still are very much in the early days of the Xbox Series X. Amazon Prime has put their Prime Day, I believe it's October 13th and 14th, which I feel like they delayed it this year because of, well, the pandemic and everything, and just the economy. So there was a bit of a delay there, but that does put you in this weird position where, for me personally, you have Prime Day, which the Prime Day sales haven't been great in the past couple of years, and they're really just an excuse to spend money. And I probably won't buy too much, if anything, on Prime Day. And frankly, some of the things I'd like to get some like bookshelves. I bet there's not going to be anything on Prime Day that is a bookshelf. I would like to get like a Raspberry Pi 4 or 2, but that's kind of it. I've kind of had everything else. I've also wrapped up some of my side projects, and I'm not really looking to start any more side projects, particularly around the Raspberry Pi, because I've kind of hit a saturation point on that. Although I like doing those projects, I was delayed by a year because I injured my hand trying to physically cut a box to be the form factor I wanted it to be, and that project had to be completely rethought after a year, and it came out much better because I was able to use a old suitcase that was plastic, and cutting into plastic was way easier than cutting into even a very thin veneered wood. And it created what they call a battle station Raspberry Pi. But yeah, I don't think there's too much I'll get from Prime Day, but probably a week after Prime Day, you're talking the fall sale for Steam, buying video games. I probably need to buy some video games in one of the big winter sales. Probably the fall sale might be the one to choose depending on what kind of rewards are around buying games at that time, and maybe we won't have that many good rewards, so maybe will only spend about $100 instead of 2 or 3 that I may have done in the past.
I did it! I won!
There we go, we're getting win streaks again. Nice. I'm interested to see in this rank that I have, which I'm at C2 at the moment. I'm interested to see if this drops down to 0 when the new expansion comes out, or if it's just going to always be at C2 and you just always keep your rank until you lose enough. Because every other collectible card game I've seen, after a month you fall down a little bit. Like they try to do something to not have somebody make it to like Grandmaster rank 1 and just never play the game again, and then come back a year later and still be at rank Grandmaster rank 1. Although maybe that doesn't really matter. Maybe you can just leave somebody at their rank and it not matter if they don't play, because as soon as they come back and try to play, they will lose. So yeah. I'm still actively trying to find new sources for video game news, by the way, so if anyone wants to put in the comments now or later a site that they recommend, I can go through the lists of sites I'm not really going to consider. I don't think CNET Gaming matters any. I don't think IGN matters any. I don't want Kotaku. I don't want Polygon. I don't want PC Gamer or Eurogamer. A lot of these companies are owned by the same parent company and they all have the same thing. Jason Schreier and Bloomberg News is not video game centric enough for me to want to follow him. Plus, he is so well connected in the mainstream video game journalism that Gamma Sutra repeats what they have to say anyway. So I'm looking for not a startup per se of a new video game review site, but something that is more on independent. And ideally I don't want something that is so extremely like seemingly right-leaning like the Quartering, which the Quartering didn't really review video games, and his exclusively game site claimed, at least, I didn't actually ever look at any of their sites, it claimed to be non-biased, so there's something there. I'd also make the argument that the Quartering's content that he does make is very, very clickbaity, and I don't want anything that's clickbaity. So there's just a long list of things I'm not interested in seeing. I want something relatively calm, relatively unbiased. I wouldn't mind it if it's slightly, silently right-leaning as far as video game review sites. Although politically it shouldn't matter one way or the other, as long as they're just not pushing the same narrative that constantly gets promoted, that like video game players are evil toxic people and they're all cis white males and things like that.
Let's play. You're done for.
See, ideally I would have evolved that,
A worthless endeavor.
but
Hey, let's play.
we'll do it that way anyways. This isn't video game related, but there was a I believe it's Legal Eagle video where he talked about all the laws that Indiana Jones broke, and like yeah, I kind of had a negative reaction to that, In part because he pointed out a part of the movie in Raiders of the Ark. Yeah, the first one. There was a part there that I was not remembering, in the fact that he meets up with a old fling, and when he shows the timeline, apparently Indiana Jones slept with his student when she was like 15 years old, and I was like, oh yeah, even at the time that would have been statutory rape. And like, oh man, I don't like the idea of the cool Indiana Jones character that I've grown up with and I'm kind of beloved with, is having that Me Too moment brought up. But and I guess that is probably a societal thing that we've all probably been turning a blind eye to. A lot of things that are implied or even directly said as jokes or as just full out, this is a thing that happened. Hollywood has been fast and loose with a lot of that too, certainly. What's that movie? The movie where nobody puts baby in the corner is from that's another example where the guy, as you get older, he gets creepier and creepier for hanging out with such a young character. And yeah, Hollywood has had a problem with people sleeping with young people, and I won't even say men and women, because there's a lot of gay men on men and probably even lesbian stuff going on too that's just not talked about. I don't know how I got talking about that other than to say, yeah, that legal. It's not what you don't want to see something you grew up with torn down, certainly. And yeah, I totally understand why, like, people still like O.J. Simpson, for instance, or Michael Jackson, and just all the classic people that were popular. I wonder if there even is a small number of people that still like I want to say the Pudding Pops guy, but that's Bill Cosby. Yeah, I bet there's still a fandom there. Anyways, we need to talk about video game news, or this is never going to be finished. So, for something completely different, Monty Python reference, Galgun Returns has been announced for Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This is a remaster of the first Galgun game, where it's an on-rail shooter where you're shooting out hearts in a heart gun to these anime girls, and you're making them fall to their knees in ecstasy. It's slightly dirty game. I don't think it's an extremely explicitly dirty game, in the sense that it's like on the Switch, and so I don't think you're gonna get to see any hardcore or even like softcore stuff. You may see some side boob, you may actually even see some nipple. I doubt you see any real lower genitalia though. And I'm hoping with the Returns version they can make good on some major issue that they had, in the sense that there was a ridiculous amount of DLC for Galgun 1. So even if you are to buy the original version of the game, you are going to end up having a pretty bad experience, because you would either have to miss out on a decent amount of content, or you're going to end up having to spend $60 to $70 extra in DLC. That's weird. That is a weird card.
Whoa, you're strong.
So let's look a little bit further into this and see what Galgun Returns offers. I'm gonna switch over to Portal Craft since I lost. Says it's gonna be 9,800 yen limited edition, which includes a 100 page art book and a vocal album featuring all the vocal tracks from the game, including newly recorded theme songs. Newly recorded theme songs, if I can actually speak. It says under improvements and new features, 10 years have passed since the original game. Small changes such as hairstyles and other fine details have improved. Brand new CGs, as in computer graphics, have been added for each heroine's introduction, and a bunch of instances throughout the story. So they've fleshed out the game. I imagine Galgun wasn't really much of a game and really wouldn't have been popular enough to justify a sequel if it weren't for the fact that YouTubers were playing it. And 10 years ago, YouTubers may have gotten away with playing something like Galgun. I wouldn't be surprised if Galgun Returns gets you banned from Twitch or YouTube these days. It says it includes preloaded downloadable content from bikinis to aprons and more. The popular downloadable content outfits are back then, are ready to enjoy from the get-go. So Galgun Return is a much better offering than the original game, which is great because I kind of wanted to play Galgun and try to play it on YouTube, and that might get me in trouble, but I was willing to give it a go. But I definitely wasn't willing to buy the DLC. So yeah, if you're cool with what they call ichi, as in lewd games, Galgun Returns looks like it is probably one for you to keep an eye on. Now, an interesting question would be, here we can kind of show a screenshot just to give some more details. See, you're shooting the girls as they're chasing towards you with a love gun, and here you've made an ecstasy shot, and then they swoon basically, which I've never seen a real human swoon. An interesting question there would be, maybe you might have a more realistic experience if you were to play it on the Switch, because then you'd have basically a Wiimote to move around and aim, and I wouldn't be surprised if Galgun originally was designed for a Wiimote, because that is the one thing that the Wiimote is actually very good about introducing, is on-rail shooting and shooting in general. The Resident Evil 4 version for the Wii definitely felt nice to play compared to the GameCube version, the original GameCube version, although the original GameCube version also worked perfectly fine. And there are still indications that we will get some kind of remaster of Resident Evil 4 fairly quickly. How did they manage to kill my character? That's annoying.
Do you know my master?
Begin.
I played that wrong. Had I played this first, then done this, then
Cleansing mode.
played this, I would have still had rush and still could have attacked. Here we have a game on Steam called Three Kingdoms, which is a low effort card game with Chinese characters and just a Chinese anime girl,
Where's my knight
which
in
is fairly
shining armor?
inconsistent for $1.99.
Where's my knight in shining armor? Master.
Let's see where we are now with the
You are done for.
pages after I've removed so much content to just block out anything that's distracting. Perhaps the Steam database information's not useful, or perhaps this. I want to go block crazy here, but there probably is something more I could get rid of, like what curators say. That's probably not useful information, but whatever. I don't follow very many curators on Steam, like two curators, maybe 3. I think I, as just a squatting effort, chose to make some kind of curator page for myself, but I didn't do anything with it because it's just not worth it to try and put reviews in written form on Steam.
My resolve spurs me forth.
Even if Steam would be cool with me linking to actual videos of myself, which it seems like they kind of don't care, so you probably could link to my own YouTube videos. I don't think that would get me any views, though. Right. This would banish all cards in my deck. This is probably the only thing I could do.
Magic guns can be kind of finicky.
Time for a stroll. Got my goggles.
Sleep.
Probably should have evolved this.
You watching? Gotta clean up my shop.
Netflix, this is a Gametsu article, has come out with a Resident Evil Infinite Darkness computer generated series coming out in 2021. Put out a teaser trailer. It seems to me you've got Leon S. Kennedy. He looks fairly different in this suit. Frankly, I don't think a suit is a good outfit for somebody you want to show off as muscular in general. Men's suits in particular, compared to like the coat and the jacket that this character is wearing, this is way tighter and way more slimming. So he just is not getting depicted well. You could pretty much easily replace this head with a completely different head if you wanted a different character in the show. And I assume that this is maybe Jill Valentine, but it could be, frankly, anybody. There's several female characters. Claire Redfield is what this is. So it's been a while since I've focused on Resident Evil. So it's based on around stories of Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield, almost as if they are going to do this instead of bringing back Leon S. Kennedy or Claire Redfield, or they're going to show up in the
Time for me to prove myself.
This one's for
in
my
the
family.
like Resident Evil Village, and this is a pre-advertisement for that. Now I can't really show the video because almost certainly it would get content ID, even though it is an advertisement and ad copy should not be copyrighted. But I can describe, I'm seeing Claire Redfield enter a house with a flashlight. There's a bat that spooked her. She stepped on some kind of silverish glass vial that seems to consistently break in the middle, and there's a bunch of them on the floor, and the flashlight is panning up as she's seeing more and more of these vials, and then it jumps to another scene where a zombie, and here we have Leon S. Kennedy in a suit. Yeah, the problem as being like the protector of the president is he probably would be in a suit, so he needs to lose the suit really fast in the TV show. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the stories start off fairly separate, and then you run into Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield merge together in the stories later on. The CG looks good enough for Netflix. It may very well be a case for Netflix that the Castlevania series was successful enough that a lot of things got greenlit a couple years ago, and that's where we got the Witcher series and this series and the Dragon Dogma series, which the Dragon Dogma series is available right now to watch on Netflix, so I should actually go and watch it. I suppose it's worth mentioning I have no real intention of blacklisting Netflix for their most recent controversy. I'm blacklisting the specific controversial movie, but I'm not going to blacklist the whole thing, because frankly Netflix is still way better than TV, just in general. But yeah, I imagine the Castlevania Season 1 was successful enough to greenlit Castlevania Season 2 and 3 and these other games. Also, Netflix has been trying desperately to rephrase what anime is and just inherently turn it away from being something that has to be created by a Japanese company for a Japanese audience, so that they can sell things like Neo Yokio, which, remember that heap of garbage show. They want to be able to make any animated product they can think of and call it anime, because they've seen in a cynical way that anything called anime gets better views than something not called anime. So they've been trying to do that, and they've kind of failed miserably. That Netflix has also kind of failed miserably to license a ton of good anime. They've very recently done a fairly good job, but they've also done a bad job of advertising it. Like, the fact that they have Cardcaptor Sakura, that should be promoted a lot more, and it's not really being promoted. To me, who has it on their wish list and even has watched a few episodes, there's been no effort to say go back and watch that. Instead, it's just watch our new Netflix originals, most of which are in no way going to interest me, and they should know that much. The fact that they got Neon Genesis Evangelion, that was a big get, the biggest get you probably could ever get, and yet they made a big deal of it for a month or two and then kind of forgot about it and moved on. Where since both of those examples and most anime examples that you're going to get on Netflix are going to be older shows, you're going to have to remind people that these things exist and say, hey, have you watched this? Do you want to go back and watch it again? Whereas Netflix is so focused on new content, you just can't do that with anime, so there is that inherent conflict, and they can try and make a middle ground there by having new content based on video games, but inherently new content based on video games is probably not going to have a good story, which is a sad statement for this like Resident Evil game, Resident Evil animated series, but it's almost certainly the case. The story there is not going to be great. The stories in general around the Resident Evil series have not been the greatest.
Our bonds. My love.
Let's see.
Let's play.
Let's go ahead and evolve this.
It won't be long now. I'm so sparkly.
So yeah, it would probably be, for a video game fan of the Resident Evil series, it'd probably be one of the worst scenarios possible if there was a Netflix series with a really, really good story, and then the next Resident Evil game had a terrible story around it. But that's probably not going to happen. As much as we all may like the Resident Evil series, they have traditionally been known as having very cheesy, ridiculous stories. And I don't think we would really accept one that was incredibly serious. We were alright with Resident Evil 7, but anything more serious than Resident Evil 7 I think would be going too far. And there is DLC for Resident Evil 7 that does take it to a sillier level. Alright. Well, we can do this without any issue. That. And that.
Save yourself.
And that. We have a game on Steam here called Escape Until Friday, which looks like it's an escape survival game. But then when you show this video, for a brief second here, there's like an actual animation section. You wake up in a basement, and you apparently have a text that tells you to escape, survive. But the game seems to be fairly asset flippy. It's rated very positive, oddly though. $4.49. English full audio and Russian. Have we hit a new level of astroturfing where Russian games, Russian low effort asset flips now can get 100 reviews and be very positive? If that is the case, then we're gonna do this,
Let's play.
and then do this, and do this, then enter. Well, I guess I have to put a game like that on the follow list. Even though I do think it probably is a low effort Russian game. We may have finally hit a point where astroturfing has gotten so bad. Astroturfing is the policy or the procedure of putting fake reviews on products, or in this case games. Maybe it has gotten so bad on Steam all of a sudden that we won't be able to lean solely on the reviews even. That would require my follow list to be completely rethought, and it would require me to then make decisions heavily discounting heavily discounting whatever reviews a game gets. I wanted to point out YouTube Creators here is promoting this character, whoever this is, Lauren Giraldo, with her first 1,000,000 subscribers, and then they've got vote things where they're saying, what do you want to learn from her? And then the answers are being authentic, her creator journey, creating in quarantine, what's next. It's gotten 501 votes in 5 hours left. This was an hour ago, I guess. It's weird to see YouTube creators promoting somebody, and clearly this is a promoter that has 500,000 followers, so they're getting propped up by somebody. Certainly this is not your average experience for an average person trying to create a YouTube content. But that post is nowhere, I would say, as egregious as this one, where they promote this person using her social media for real change, and then they post this person and she looks fine from here. This would be a fine camera angle. This is a fine camera angle. This at this point is just Twitch streaming, Twitch thoughterry. This this is really a lot of cleavage to put your camera at, to the point where you've cut off your own head as a shot and focused on showing as much cleavage as you thought you could get away with. Yeah, and I think most content creators would not be allowed to do that. And as soon as I played the video, it jumped from that screenshot as it were to a different screenshot of a different person by the looks of it, or someone with a completely different hairstyle. So clearly even Twitter's screenshots are being manipulated here. The entirety of this video is that, and yet the first 5 seconds is this.
You know, my master?
Sorry. So, yeah, I'm not going to go on a rampage against manipulating thumbnails and putting cleavage in thumbnails and manipulating your camera angle to show cleavage, but I am going to certainly ask, why is YouTube creators promoting and sharing this? This isn't even a retweet. This is something that they were fully on board with. And yet this is the other thing that they certainly would have. And then, before that, they were just putting out these, messages of support or quotes from creators, which seems much more realistic. Although I guess come back down to this point and you've got another character showing her stomach. So apparently YouTube creators has decided to try to sex up their screenshots on Twitter, which, alright. I guess the question to ask then, is this a dog whistle, as it were, towards the idea that YouTube is going to be more lenient on showing skin? And I would probably suspect it isn't. At least I bet it's not going to be consistent on that. And yeah, when you get back to September 22nd, here you have a decently framed person with a decent shirt, an actual shirt on. And then there have been several men that have been shown, and you can see in this case this person has framed his head too far away from the top of the screen, but he is trying to keep his head in the center of the screen. And then here we have an animation of a very large woman taking a screenshot, and she would definitely have a lot of cleavage. So I'm getting mixed messages from these thumbnails. certainly from YouTube creators. Here's another screenshot of a girl in a regular shirt. This definitely feels like this is something that they've started doing just in the past month, a few days. Well, here you've got a Paris Hilton image showing her shoulder, but actually that's not really showing that much skin. It's just a bit provocative in the angles, if anything, if you're going to complain about anything.
Do you know my master?
And Paris Hilton, it's kind of expected, frankly, that she would be more scantily clad. A lot of the images before, in early September and before, are images not even of people. There's another woman perfectly framed. Her head's getting cut off a little bit, but framed fairly well. And then at that point, I'm back to the point where they were fighting against the proposed Australian law, which they've not mentioned anything new about, so apparently that law didn't go anywhere, or it got approved and YouTube just doesn't want to admit it was approved. But yeah, that is definitely some mixed messages. Definitely getting some mixed messages from YouTube creators as far as what kind of content creators they want to promote and what kind of footage they want on their channel. One of the great things I think I could say about sites like OnlyFans is the idea that it is becoming the thing, that the place that should be the place where people go to just do lewd shots or do full nudity. I assume OnlyFans does allow just straight up hardcore pornography if they want to. But yeah, that's good in my opinion, because that sucks everybody who wants to do that to that location, and there's no like dancing around the rules or false advertisement going on there. If you're going to OnlyFans, you're probably only going to see lewds and nudity. But if you're going to Twitch, Twitch sold itself as a video game streaming service. If you're going to YouTube, YouTube sells itself as a family-friendly video streaming service that covers almost any topic. For as much as YouTube tells all of its creators they have to be family-friendly, it's not fair for them to come back and start having an algorithm that promotes non-family friendly content, or an official Twitter channel and YouTube channel in Twitch creators to promote people who are violating the rules that other people are being held to. Moving on, TechRaptor has this Craftopia roadmap details an ambitious future article. Craftopia, I believe, is one of these games that is trying to look a lot like the YouTube, like Zelda Breath of the Wild. Unfortunately, I'm still having a lot of problems trying to block the content that shows up, the ad content on TechRaptor. It seems that the ads on TechRaptor are so well integrated and so moved that I can do it multiple times. I've tried to block these things and it has failed to find it. but ideally that's what it should have looked like. But you know, it might also just be a case where I'm just gonna have to block a bunch of the same things or very similar things until I have a very long block list, and everything gets blocked. Checkcrafter has another article here. Michelle Ancel is accused of toxic management at Ubisoft. I believe Michelle Ancel is the person who recently left, or he is the person in charge of Ubisoft in total. But I could be wrong. There's just so many people that have been accused of the same thing. So yeah, here it was the lead person in charge of Beyond Good and Evil 2 that recently left the industry to run his animal group. So he got out a couple of weeks earlier before accusations came out against him. Now I don't know if that inherently means the accusations are true or anything, because it still would be totally believable that somebody just is making up an accusation. And frankly, toxic management compared to all the other accusations made against people in charge of Ubisoft is a pretty low, relatively speaking, accusation. But they're saying that his management style caused the delays, which, okay, yeah, I could see people trying to blame all the delays on someone who left the industry. It would be fairly easy, particularly if you were one of the people that actually caused the delays, to try to put the blame on somebody else. Yeah, that's where I would suspect a lot of this is coming from, is that they would just try to blame the person who's already left, which is a standard business policy. You blame the guy that just left and that you just replaced for all the problems of development. I frankly wouldn't be surprised if it was a case of Michelle Ancel literally telling his team to blame him after he's left, so that they can get some more slack from higher up managers at Ubisoft. At the core of the issue, though, it's regardless of whether Michelle Ancel was a quote-unquote toxic manager, which I have yet to see the actual accusations here, it falls on him.
I will not suffer you.
Because he was the one in charge. So but the phrase toxic, I mean, if you want to make the argument to me that every single manager or almost every single manager is toxic, sure, I'll believe it. They usually have to push people more than is realistically or reasonable. They usually have to make crazy demands and be the jerk in the situation, regardless of whether they want to or not. At a certain point, like managers have to be the slave drivers, and so yeah, that is a quote-unquote toxic thing. But when we actually look at the argument, the short of it, according to TechRaptor, is many of the delays were caused by sheer scope of the game. So they wanted to make a big game, and that caused delays. Well, that if they were trying to make a big game, they should have given a reasonable time scale. Michelle Ancel wanted a highly detailed world, and the game planned to include multiple planets for the players to visit. One developer noted that Ansel wanted a stupid level of detail for the Ganesha city and a prospect that was viewed as a little nuts considering the scale of the game. What's that? Geisha City? No, it's Ganesha. Several developers speaking to Liberation Allege, I guess that's the original news source, alleged that Ansel would regularly trash talk developers or ask for redesigns on parts of the project. These delays would have a compounding effect. One department suddenly falling behind would have a knock-on effects for everyone in the studio. That sounds like standard video game development. Remember, these are French people too, so they may just be complaining because the French like to complain. I always just generically, stereotypically feel it's necessary to dismiss the complaints of French companies. So his allegations of toxic behavior is that he asks for redesigns and trash talks developers. Trash talking may be a little toxic. Asking for redesigns on parts of the project directly in the scope of management. That any manager would have done that. Ubisoft brought in new management to try and balance out Ansel's creative decisions, and it didn't help the situation, which pretty much means then it wasn't the manager's fault at that point. Many of the persons wanted to be the person who saved beyond good and evil, which is a good thing, and were perhaps over enthusiastic about managing their aspects of the project. So managers were over managing, and yet there's still delays. Several developers reportedly burnt out and lost enthusiasm for the project. So this feels like it really is probably 2 or 3 people have come out and complained about being managed fairly decently and trying to hide the fact that they failed. It's possible that he did want a stupid level of detail. But at a certain point you say, okay, I can do that, but that's going to take another 6 months. If that conversation happens and you say, well, and he says, no, I want it done in 3 weeks, and he's right that it really should have been doable in 3 weeks, that's the employee, that's not the managers that's bad at their job or slow at their job. If that conversation comes out and somebody said, yeah, I can do that for you, but it's going to take 6 months, and it really would have taken 6 months, and he says, no, I want it in 3 weeks, well, that then wouldn't have led to delays in the game. That would have led to him then firing the person because he made unreasonable demands. And that's really the scenario here from my perspective that would have shown that Michel Ancel was the one being a bad manager there, is if he had fired people because they weren't doing the level of quality of work that he was happy with. And in France, perhaps it's a lot harder to fire people with the unions and such. But yeah, he didn't do that at all. So it, to me, probably feels like it was the employees. Sometimes it is just the employees and not the manager. Now, I will say probably there is a failure on Michel Ancel's management in a different part, in the sense that he was failing to go to his managers and say, I need more employees, I need more resources, because those projects, Beyond Good and Evil 2, have not been finished yet. They've been delayed a ton. They don't feel like they ever have been a priority for Ubisoft. So what he's really failing to do is get a budget to do that, because at the core of it, Michel Ancel could have moved the entire project to a different studio, an internal group of people, and just fired everybody on his team. And he probably should have done that at some point after so many delays. It is also worth mentioning that Beyond Good and Evil 2 was in particular soliciting random artists to make content to put inside of Beyond Good and Evil 2 through a website. So he was, in a weird way, soliciting people to replace the internal artistic creators. So, yeah. And we've seen the trailers. Let's see. Actually, let me see if we can find a trailer for Beyond Good and Evil 2. Let's see. This news.
Formidable. This is the end.
So obvious.
Like, here's Beyond Good and Evil 2. Here's a image of what the character looks like. Here's some more images of the characters. This doesn't seem like insane levels of detail by my part. It just looks like AAA levels of detail. Hit record was the thing that they were soliciting people put their art in the game in general. And this was a E3 2018 spot, so that they were doing that. Let me see if I can find the actual trailer though.
Formidable.
I'm gonna have to silence these guys at some point. Play this.
I'm gonna make history.
And do this.
The world cycles on.
Begin. I've got a brilliant.
Let's see. Battle.
Formidable.
I guess maybe that's what I did. Because there's like no real squelch button. Let's see. Trailer. The video is tagged as inappropriate for some users. Interesting. Okay, so here's the trailer, and we'll just jump through this. It starts off with space, and then you've got this voodoo lady with a decent level of detail, and then you've got this pig lady. She's doing some kind of acupuncture. Here you've got this afro lady and a nice ship. Here you've got the pig guy. Like, nothing here seems incredibly crazy visually. Some of this seems incredibly crazy as what maybe the gameplay mechanics are, assuming you actually might be flying around in a spaceship for what was a Zelda-like adventure game, the original one. Here you have her jumping through space and ending up on this pirate ship, and then you have here the clone of Jade with a bloodied sword. And yeah, these graphics don't look in any way crazy, even for 2018. So the fact that you would want for a beloved niche game to have a decent level of detail around that, to the point where you would to the point you would want big worlds with big open worlds in a Metroidvania Zelda game. Like, I feel like you would need some nuance there. If they came out and could show some evidence to say that they wanted a world that was hugely graphically detailed and as big as the entire overworld of like Zelda Breath of the Wild, that seems reasonable, because Zelda Breath of the Wild did that. If anything, I would say the level of graphics on the 2017 trailer is even more detailed. These trailers definitely do look like they were more made by an art that they should have been sent to a third-party animation company to make, instead of trying to have it done in-house. And then maybe it was not done in-house. And maybe at a certain point he did want something that was more of a cartoon than a video game. Yeah. These claims that Michelle Ancel wanted a ridiculous level of detail are going to fall apart miserably compared when Cyberpunk comes out and compared to The Witcher 3. Like, The Witcher 3 had a decent amount of detail all over the place. Too. And this inherently is part of my protect the kicked puppy mentality, that I don't believe accusations inherently at the beginning until some real evidence comes out, and these accusations in particular seem to be particularly weak. Like, that he was a manager and some people didn't like him is the, you could say that for any manager. Destroy an enemy. And then hit that. And that. And that. No, I gotta lose. Anyway, so let's move on from that story. But yeah, they really need to come out with some better accusations. You're not even saying some basic things. Like, if you're gonna claim a manager as a toxic manager, you need to have some stories of him habitually yelling at people, screaming, throwing things, berating people, making fun of people. You need some real school ground bullying going on before you can even make that claim. And perhaps evaluating the quality of somebody's work as a manager is part of their job. So saying somebody's bad at their job may sound like a school ground insult, but it also is inherently part of a manager's job if they actually are bad at it. So yeah, really, really weak accusations. And it's a sad precedent, frankly. Maybe not the first, but it's a precedent nonetheless, of what's going to happen to pretty much anybody that has any management position or any perceived position of power, as the SJWs call it in the video game industry, even as they retire, even as they leave the industry, there are going to be people that come out and take swipes at them and attack them. Look forward in sadness to Shigeru Miyamoto, who seems like he is hugely respected and has never done a mean thing in his life. Look forward to a future where he retires and people come out and attack him for being toxic in one way or the other. Because stuff like that is probably going to happen until we stop listening to these kind of accusations and tell people that they need to either file a court suit. In that case in particular, they needed to file a union grievance or a lawsuit or just shut up, because at a certain point the phrase toxic goes both ways, and if you're just making accusations to hurt somebody, that's pretty toxic also. Moving on, TechRaptor has the September 2020 Humble Choice overview, which is Golf with Friends and Caddy Pack DLC OST, and Generation Zero, and Forager, and Vampire the Masquerade Quarter East of New York, and Fun with Ragdolls, and Lethal Leap Blaze, and Strange Brigade. Strange Brigade, I think, is a game that requires multiple players, otherwise it looked like a decent game. Evoland Legendary Edition, Ukulele and the Impossible Lair, and Catherine Classic, and The Occupation, and The Shapeshifting Detective, which is a full motion video, and then a game called Alt 254, haven't heard of that one. Carto Sneak Peek, that's a new game. I think in Humble Choice you get all of these games. I don't think you have to actually pick. It's kind of a terrible name. But the Humble Choice does run into a problem of... Sorry, we're going back and forth trying to win. It does run into a problem, I believe, of you having to kind of log into a monthly subscription, lock into a monthly subscription. That I don't think that's a good offering for most people, unless you're just brand new to getting video games. By year 2 or 3 of picking and choosing Humble Bundles, you probably at that point have all the games that would ever show up in a Humble Bundle. And that definitely is the case that I'm running into, where more and more every month I see these Humble Bundles and they don't offer any game that interests me or any game that I just don't already own. Moving over, we have a game on Steam here called Bermuda Lost Survival, and it's rated very negatively, but then mostly positive overall, so I don't know what's going on here. It looks fine. It looks like a Raft clone, and perhaps that's the problem, but it actually seems to be kind of its own thing also. It's $12.74, English only. Let's see what the negative reviews say. Oh. Let's see. Well, there's just a hefty grind to nothing but building a fancy raft, I guess. There's a sunken door, but there's no content really. $10 game or less, in my opinion. That's what they say. The text on these reviews is still fairly small to read. Survival game, survival game, survival game. Scam artist, that's all. Buy and waste your money. Alright, so why are there so many mostly positive reviews? Probably because I bet the positive reviews were when it was in early access and people were cutting it a break. And now that it is out of early access, it seems like people are not willing to cut it a break. And frankly, not that many people are interested in playing multiple versions of Raft, which, if we look over here at Raft, well, itself is still in early access and it's rated very positively because they're still putting content in it, where this obviously developer isn't. Also, you have Subnautica, which is another game that is similar enough to that experience. So yeah, I don't think Bermuda Lost Survival needs to be on the fall list. Next, we have a game on Steam here called the Seven Keys Escape Room, which seems to be a dark screenshot, asset flip horror, escape the room game. It's not highlighting any puzzles or anything. It's $4.99 English only. See, the only thing I could do is to even give it a chance is skip through this trailer and see if there's actually any gameplay shown. And it doesn't seem like there is. It seems like you just find the keys and that's that. So, yeah, another game not good enough to put on the fall list. See, Komatsu has a article. Konami announces Eden Zero third-person action game, action RPG for consoles, and a top-down action RPG for mobile, which oddly does bring up this potential split experience for depending on what platform you play it on. Let's see. Evolve and play this. This guy's playing nothing but amulets. Plus, there's a new anime visual and character boards. So, Eden Zero looks like it's probably not going to be a great anime. My estimation from that is because you have like this sci-fi guy who has guns here. You have this fighter stereotype character over here. You have an anime tech fighter girl here. And then you have an anime ninja fighter character here. Then you have your cute character here and the cute chibi fairy character here. They're just all over the place as far as trying to be something for everyone. That it doesn't feel like a consistent smart concept. And if you're making an anime to promote a game, then you probably haven't thought the anime through very well. Looking at these sketches, which these are all extremely generic and all over the place as far as the style and an idea. There's just nothing here that makes me feel like this would become a beloved video game or a beloved anime or a beloved anything. Well, I may have made a mistake on that. Yeah, I'm pretty much gonna lose. Playing all those amulets did work for him. So yeah, I'm not hyped around Eden Zero. Next we have a game on Steam here called Knight's Pride. A lot of the news I cover, quote unquote, is just games that came out. So, is a game like Knight's Pride really news? No, it's a RPG Maker style game for $2.99. Did I really need to report on it? No. I could spend the extra time to curate. I just don't have any reason or any extra time in my schedule, any point where I'd want to schedule time to curate the number of games. Plus, if I curated, sometimes there would be no games to talk about. Some games there would be still lots of games to talk about. This was an interesting announcement I saw from Gametsu. A game called Shadowverse Champions Battles has a second trailer and 19 minutes of gameplay. This is a card battle RPG due out November 5th in Japan. So this is seemingly not this Shadowverse game, but a re-release of the same game with maybe some of the rules changed a little bit, but it's the same cards, and it is the characters I imagine from the anime that came out about 3 months ago. Let's see. Yeah, you see in this you are running around, you are talking to people. It is the anime characters. I can clearly recognize this. But then it just falls back to playing Shadowverse. Which is an interesting thing. Had there been a Yu-Gi-Oh game first that just played Yu-Gi-Oh, and then 4 years later you released your first RPG game that told the story of the events of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, maybe there's a thought there. It could also be that for the gameplay in that... oops, there, that was a mistake. It could be for the gameplay in this game, it's gonna be heavily scripted and only against AI players, so you may pretty much be guaranteed a victory. It could be that they felt like the original Shadowverse game is just not kid-friendly enough. You can see this is Sero B rated, so there might just be something around that, and the gameplay here is just a portion of the presentation. It's an interesting thought. I don't know if that's gonna work, though. I could easily imagine the idea of splitting your player base or asking new people to play the same game, or new people to play the game on a different platform. Just seems weird, but it definitely does feel like it is probably going to be a feeder game that gets younger players into Shadowverse, who then will eventually just play the standard Shadowverse. I would think it would be fairly ridiculous for them to drop support for the original Shadowverse. There very well may be no premium currency in this game at all, and there are emotes, so you probably are at some level playing against real people, and it does seem like it is designed for controller or cell phone a little bit better, because yeah, that definitely felt like controller inputs and not touchscreen inputs or mouse inputs. Overall, though, this does just look like the same game. I'm not seeing anything really different there. If anything, this version of the game looks more polished. Let's go ahead and evolve this. Never thought about it, but like, if there was a Hearthstone game that came out and it was based on some kind of Hearthstone cartoon, which frankly a Hearthstone cartoon would be nicely designed and should be made, and and it was just for younger kids to get into Hearthstone, I could see the idea there, but you're effectively making the same game twice, which maybe makes it easier the second time around. That might be interesting. But then if you think about like Magic the Gathering in particular has that major problem of being really not something that most parents would want their kids to play, and being something that's really expensive, and thus parents wouldn't want their kids getting into it for that reason. I could see something called Magic something for some other spin-off kid-friendly cheaper game with no like premium currency built into it for kids, and designed specifically to advertise as something only for kids. I think that might be an interesting experiment. Okay. Yeah, as I'm skipping and looking at the gameplay. It's coming out for the Switch, so it seems like it may be a Switch exclusive too, which, okay, that makes a little bit more sense also. Instead of them trying to have something that they have to constantly update, there might be a great argument to name Shadowverse something different, where it just includes a certain number of cards, because the Switch in particular doesn't have enough room for the constant updates that would exist around Shadowverse. And I guess that also would explain why there really isn't a Hearthstone for the Switch, and why there really isn't a Magic the Gathering Arena for the Switch. Both of which of those games would work very well on the Switch. Other than the fact that, once again, Magic's not really for young kids, and both of them have premium currencies. A lot of these announcements were at the Tokyo Game Show 2020 online, which happened. There was a lot of trailers put out, but no real major articles around them, at least so far. And most of the announcements were not particularly like great announcements or anything of interest to the West anyways. Here we have one, Psycho Shooting Collection has been announced for PS5. The Psycho Shoot 'em Ups are coming to the PS4 and Xbox One. Was Psycho, it must be a company. Let's see, Strikers 1945, Dragon Blaze, Gunbird 1 and 2, Gunbarich, Samurai Aces 1 and 3, Soul Divide, Strikers 1945 1, 2, and 3, Tengai, and Zero Gunner. Yeah, I don't recognize any of these shoot 'em ups. I'm surprised shoot 'em ups have maintained popularity and had popularity in the first place in Japan. And they certainly were somewhat popular for a brief moment in America, but that brief moment was probably somewhere in the 80s, and I don't think there's been much of a desire for them. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if most of the reason why there were shoot 'em ups in the West on arcade machines was simply because they were being made in Japan, and they were probably being sold at a discount and shipped from Japan while getting like English patches to them, effectively English ROMs. Let's see, Ys 8 Mobile has online footage, which they are definitely promoting bikini clad imagery, which I don't think this RPG game is so much about the bikini clad imagery, really, but it catches someone's eye, so I can't really blame them. Yeah, There's a whole anime-esque trailer that they showed for just a brief second. And in the middle of a long presentation. All these presentations are just like super long presentations. Speaking of presentations, some live holotubers, the ones that replace themselves with anime virtual idols, mentioned Taiwan and apparently got suspended for mentioning Taiwan. I haven't done a full investigation on that and probably won't get the details, but yeah, it seems like even at least from one perspective, even mentioning Taiwan will get you in trouble, and that does seem to be accurate, because China, mainland China, is doing every bit they can to completely deny them statehood or deny that they exist in any form whatsoever. So they're just effectively trying to seize Taiwan, is in the same way that they're trying to seize Hong Kong when Hong Kong citizens do not want to be under mainland China's rule, and they're trying to seize Tibet and several other parts. Anything on their border or anywhere close to their border is under the constant threat of being seized by China. And yeah, more Western people need to speak out against it and say that's not acceptable. And it doesn't matter if China has managed to corrupt the government to say that, to have the government officials claim that it's the people's will that they be ruled by mainland China. The truth of the matter is nobody wants to be ruled by China, and then the people are making that fairly clear in protests. Moving on, we have a article from Gematsu. Genshin Impact is now available for PS4, PC, iOS, and Android. And so another Japanese RPG is out there. We've got anime characters and fancy anime outfits. Let's see. This is just a storyline preview trailer, which just shows a few animations, and I would say they are not particularly fluid animations like you would expect in a cartoon. They are more like live 2D animations where the characters are just slightly swaying back and forth. Here's a great example. Just a live 2D type animation where things move back and forth and there's very little movement or interaction. So without listening to the audio of that, I have no idea what the story is or anything about Genshin Impact, although the name does sound familiar, so it probably is based off of something that should be somewhat recognizable. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Target Practice, which looks like a bunch of targets falling down that you're supposed to click on. Almost looks like you're supposed to slice through it, like Cut the Fruit or Fruit Ninja. That's the name of the game. Cut the Rope is another game. This is 79 cents, English only. It doesn't look quality enough to be worth anyone's time. It might be worth 79 cents if you just wanted that type of gameplay. I don't know how many people would want that type of gameplay though. Alright. I could destroy an enemy, or I think I have to do this and then do this, and then that's gonna place an eternal whale, 4 eternal whales in his inventory, and I could do 6, I could do 9 and kill this guy. Is it worth it? Next we have a game on Steam called Undead Darlings No Cure for Love, which looks like an interesting name, but a boring game. It looks like it's a dungeon crawler game where you're playing as zombies and you get a little bit of visual novel stuff too. But yeah, the art looks pretty terrible, and dungeon crawler's not going to be that interesting anyways. It's $26.99 with English full audio, which stands out because it does definitely feel like it's trying to have a Japanese inspired feel to it, but it's kind of failing miserably at that, and there's no Japanese language, so you know it's not really a Japanese game. See, do this, and then do this. Then we'll just play that in return. Next we have a game on Steam called Grandmother, which looks like it is just a horror asset flip game with a creepy grandmother. They all like to start with these like animations in the trailer to show that the game isn't just walking around with a stationary character, but it is pretty much just walking around with a character. This one's holding a candle the whole time and seems like they have no interaction to the world otherwise. It's $14.99 English only, and just looking at the image of the grandmother tells me a lot. I want to evolve this. I want to do this, and then I want to do this. And then evolve this. And then evolve this. Then in return. I don't know what you would really want to animate to make a grandmother creepy, frankly. Like, to me personally, grandmothers are either rampant Trump supporters, for lack of a better description, or sweet old ladies who probably don't have much political view that they would be willing to share at all, if they have one at all. So, yeah, I don't know what would make a grandmother creepy. I guess, personally, I just didn't have any creepy grandmothers in my life. Now, I would argue probably both of them were fairly crazy, but not creepy. and I'm not getting anywhere as far as victories. And I'm playing between Forcecraft and Portalcraft, two of my most successful decks, which, yeah, definitely screams time for some deck rebuilds as soon as that new expansion comes out, which is good because we don't want the game to get stale. It's also fairly common, I think, these days for grandmothers to be younger. Maybe in the next generation we'll see that kind of change. I guess in general I don't see humans as too creepy. You have to work fairly hard to creep me out. And I guess also I've watched a lot of horror movies, so the idea of the idea of just a normal looking human or a mostly normal looking human being creepy really in no way compares to like Videodrome or any of the Japanese horror movies or Asian horror movies. Tetsuo the Iron Man might be an old reference there. I want to watch that actually. I saw someone mention that and I'm like, yeah, that would be one of the older ones to watch. Moving on, we have a TechRaptor article here. Proteus is one beefy shooter, which, yeah, it looks like it's got too much of a heads-up display for a shooter game, and it looks like it's probably a shooter, but they're just saying previewing it and it's coming out on Steam. Is probably close to an old school Doom Duke Nukem 3D game. Like, I did watch the video review of Serious Sam 4 from the YouTuber I follow that actually seems to be a fairly big fan of Serious Sam series, and he was not happy with Serious Sam 4 because it was buggy more than anything, and just kind of not well thought out as far as content or anything like that. It was just not a good experience. So, yeah, that's a shame, but in a weird way that also helps me because it lets me then pretty much ignore Serious Sam 4 and probably the entire Serious Sam series, which I am kind of more than happy to ignore the Serious Sam series and never play any of it. Let's see. This could do 5. This could do nothing. This could do something. I could make a copy of that. So if I play this and then make a copy of that, might be something to that idea. Gamma Sutra put out a blog here. I'm not sure if this is anything that interests me per se, but Amazon's Luna, what's on Steam's front page, and more. This is probably a just reposting of things that have already happened. As far as what shows up on Steam's front page, it's fairly blatantly said that Amazon, Steam specifically, is getting people to pay to promote big games, and there is a small level of intention. There's a small level of editorial decision also. They're not just going to put an absolute garbage trash game on the front page, but they will put anything that has managed to make it to the trending category in their minds, and then they'll advertise it. So we have seen certainly products that are of a lower quality on the Steam front page right next to products that seem to probably deserve it a lot more. This is the one where it's going to do at least 6 damage every turn. So what can we do to destroy that? Because that's what we need to happen. Gamatsu has a announcement here for a game called Teslagrad 2, which I don't recall a game called Teslagrad 1. So, okay. But that seems to be the case, that there was a game by that. TechRaptor has an article, Bring Back World of Darkness, which is, I think, just talking about Vampire the Masquerade Quarteries of New York, which I feel like they've already talked about several times. So it is getting kind of redundant. I don't know what to do. I have no idea how we're supposed to save ourselves, because we can't do anything. So I probably should just concede. But I was going to lose anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. Wondering if for TechRaptor, if I'm just going to have to block specific elements individually in a retroactive way before it will just get the general notes. I think what I probably am going to have to do is put in some generic search things, basically an asterisk, to say, hey, anything within this area should be blocked. Which it really shouldn't have to work that way, because it's supposedly doing it by the CSS or DCOM of event object or something programmy that HTML has introduced. There's a lot of things that have expanded on the concepts of HTML back from since I learned HTML, and maybe I just didn't learn all of HTML as it really existed even back then. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Genshin Impact anti-cheat no longer runs after the game is closed, which is, I guess, cool. At the end of the day, I guess it isn't going to affect me any, because I wasn't going to play Genshin Impact anyways. I don't even know what the game is, so I need to know what the game is first before a I hear news about whether or not an anti-cheat device is going to turn out to be annoying. See, there's a video here showing what it seems. Yeah, this looks like a anime-esque RPG game. And I think Genshin Impact probably is an anime-esque RPG game, but it must be like an MMO or something, otherwise I don't know why it would have an anti-cheat device in the first place. It's a gacha-based augmented reality, no, Asian RPG? Action RPG? ARPG is action, yeah. So, yeah, it's a... Let's play that, and that, and hit that. So yeah, it's a gacha-based action RPG that launched for Windows, iOS, Android, and PlayStation 4, and is coming to the Switch. It was #1 in the iOS game download category for more than 6 countries, and then the #2 highest grossing iOS game in China, so seemingly pretty good. So why did it need an anti-cheat? Were people finding ways to get free in-game currency or grind out currency better? That does feel like a weird choice, particularly for a game that seems relatively new. But on the face of it too, it's for a cell phone game. It's too grindy, too many button presses for my liking, and it's a little too graphical. So I imagine that means you'll start to see a lot of repeated graphics fairly quickly in the gameplay. Right, well, 3. Do this. And do that. And then evolve this. And take that out. Take that out. Attack here. In the turn. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Phil Spencer says Microsoft, quote, absolutely plans on releasing future console hardware, which that seems like a no-duh situation, frankly. I don't know why you would think for a second they wouldn't. It is probably worth mentioning, though, that the cost of that Seagate external SSD is pretty much the same cost as the entire device for a terabyte extra of space. But there is a terabyte of space, of which only 800 gigabytes is actually accessible internally in the Xbox Series X anyways. So you are getting quite the markup if you want to take it as a markup, or you could take it as quite the discount for buying the console, to the point where it might be worth it to actually buy an Xbox Series X that's broken and try and desolder the internal NVMe and use it in a computer instead. It's worth mentioning also that I went too far and all the text disappeared with my ad blocker. So now I'm going to have to go back and adjust this because I blocked the actual important text. So, and I really wish uBlock Origin had something that would let me unblock things. but it doesn't. When it's turned off, you don't have the ability to use the element picker. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to manually go through the code. One, two, this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then in the turn. Next, we have a game on Steam called Deep State Story, which is clearly a political joke game, troll game, where apparently it's just a boxing game. It's $1.99 English only. I imagine we'll see more political troll games and joke games come out, and let's see. I don't know if there's anything more that really can be said about them other than they are not worth your time. They're not worth anybody's time. Let's play this and this, and then this will put 3 fairies in my hand. More. And this. And attack, attack, attack. Tech Raptor has a review for Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I imagine the review will be fairly bad, like, since they're just emulated. I guess the real question is, do you review the game based on the re-release and the emulation of the re-release, or do you review the game based on the content? And they've gone with, I guess, just the content, giving it an 8.5. All 3 of these games are representative of why Super Mario is such a great series, though the ports for 64 and Sunshine have a few flaws. Galaxy feels absolutely perfect on the Switch, which I guess makes a argument. And you see, I've also gone too far now, and the pros and the cons were blocked. Pros are all 3 games look spectacular, new controls work well, and the soundtracks and seamless transition between titles. The cons are 64's lower resolution and Sunshine's GameCube controller scheme and frames per second disc. I almost said first person shooter. Dips. Right, we've got to kill one of these guys so we can do this, so we can then kill one of these guys to do this and this and this. And is there anything we can do to save the day? Gamma Sutra has some sponsored content here. Get started with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos on the Xbox Series X. It's a little surprising that Dolby Vision has become a thing, because I believe Dolby Vision is kind of more of a higher dynamic range in the graphics, which Dolby has been known for being more focused around the audio. But then again, nobody really cares about the audio, so Dolby probably does make themselves more relevant by introducing a standard for a vision, for a graphics standard. In general, I think everybody should step up to a HDR TV and Dolby Atmos audio, but it's going to require you to basically buy a brand new surround sound receiver to make sure it supports both Dolby Vision pass-through and Dolby Atmos audio and you're going to need a TV on top of that that supports Dolby Vision at least. The surround sound would support the Dolby Atmos. If you're getting a TV that somehow supports Dolby Atmos, you're not going to get much of a experience there. Maybe you can find a sound bar that works there. I heard about some cool speakers that point upward when it gets a Dolby Atmos signal, but then point forward and just physically, mechanically move the direction their speakers point. If you don't have an Atmos signal, since Dolby Atmos tries to bounce the signal off the roof to give you a spot on the ceiling that sounds like a helicopter is above you, is the general explanation there. Although, how often does that happen? Sometimes it happens a lot, sometimes not so much. Inherently, it's always this catch-22 where there is no real adoption of Dolby Atmos or surround sound in general in consumers. Like, most people don't have surround sound systems or don't have them configured or use them. So, since they know nobody uses them, they don't bother to encode the audio very often to use that, even though the movie version of might be encoded for more surround sound. Often the audio is not encoded for more than a 5.1 or 7.1 surround sound setup. So, yeah. If all TVs at the very least had soundbar technology and beam splitting, beam bouncing technology by default, and we had no more standard or as standard stereo TVs, then there might be a level of progress there. But that would mean that the license for like a lot of Dolby and DTS may still be a factor too. The licensing of the playback codecs for Dolby and DTS are expensive, and cheaper TVs would never embrace that, and having better quality speakers is expensive, and TVs wouldn't embrace that. So it really has just become a race to the bottom. And video games have not done anything quite well enough to justify or in any way push people to buy surround sound receivers. Frankly, it would be annoying, but it would be kind of nice if the Xbox Series X told people, hey, you should get a surround sound receiver. This would sound better in surround sound. Just when they first set it up, or when they announce things. That would be great. But I don't think that would happen, because it would just feel like an upsell, and somebody who just spent $400 on a Xbox Series X is not going to be happy about spending another $400 for a surround sound receiver, and potentially another $400 or way more on speakers. The only good way, if there even is a good way to get into surround sound, is to be effectively rolling in cash, because you're not going to have a good experience if you bought just 2 speakers and a surround sound amp. You need to have 7 or more speakers, and you're not going to get that in a great full bundle for less than $300. Let's see. Should have evolved this one and done more damage. I guess I could have evolved that one. I didn't. TechRaptor has this article. Game Freak is preserving Pokemon documents by digitizing them, which is better phrased as, why in the heck has Game Freak not been digitizing their documents up until this point? It sounds insane completely. And inherently this just goes to show how backwards and non-modern the doing business in Japan is. People often imagine Japan as a land of nothing but robots, but actual business is still done mostly with fax machines, and it's just, this was the way it was done traditionally. There's no reason to change it. We're not going to embrace new technology and new ways of doing things. There's effectively a bunch of old men running the companies. They don't want to learn anything new. So yeah, a significant amount of the documents literally just written on paper in binders. It's worth mentioning the KyoAni fire that recently happened in this case, where a significant amount of animation cells and just things inside of the KyoAni building was burnt and probably had no backups at all. They did have some digital backups, but not a lot. And that fire was started by a deranged person, and yet the building clearly did not have enough fire suppression equipment to stop a fire started by a single person, which is not a good statement for safety. But having known that fire happened, and that was probably 4 months ago, it has taken Game Freak this long to announce that they're starting to do something to avoid that, which that seems fairly ridiculous. Okay, this has nothing, this has nothing, this has nothing. It literally can't do anything. And you kill the whale and it gives him 4 more whales. Building up his card base. Next we have a game on Steam, Chronikas de Landolf, which looks like it is just an RPG Maker game. English not supported. Portuguese Brazil, $9.99. Alright. And look at that, we've made it to a rank loss. And I think at this point we've been going nearly 2.5 nearly 3 hours at this point. So I'm gonna just choose to not play any further, and let's just burn through the news. There's seemingly quite a lot. You have a very different background music playing now. Quite a sharp turn from the Code Geass crossover music to a kind of banjo western music. We'll get our daily rewards, but we won't get what I would have liked to happen, which was the daily missions done. Just failed miserably to find a single extra victory in Forcecraft or Portalcraft, which after that point I could have just tried to play some other kind. Like, I desperately need one more victory. But so I guess we'll try one more game. Maybe now. I also desperately need to quit playing Unlimited and move on to playing Limited. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Zynga is shutting down Farmville after over a decade. And I I suspect that there will be some people upset about that even now. This is, I think, the original Farmville game, though not the one that would be on the Facebook game site. If it is the one that's on the Facebook game site, then okay. But I assume there's a Farmville 2 also out there somewhere, so and there's plenty of other games that do the same thing. Yeah. Running into some connection timing outs issues, and I don't know what that is all about. It just feels like generally the internet is never going to be as good as it once was, until I don't know if there ever will be a case. People need to work on the back-end internet servers better. TechRaptor has a survey that says Xbox Series X likely purchasers are richer than PlayStation 5 buyers, which is kind of surprising considering the top of the line of both are the same price. And Xbox Series X comes with Game Pass Ultimate, so you're potentially going to not have to buy as many games with the Xbox Series X as the PlayStation 5. And also the Xbox Series X has a payment plan option. So interesting. I guess what that boils down to is to say people who have money have chosen the Xbox Series X. People who don't have money are probably, in my opinion, likely to select the Xbox Series X. That leaves a small middle ground of people who have an average amount of money that would be likely to buy the PlayStation 5. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Among Us has passed 2.5 million daily active players on Steam. Yeah, people still ultra hyped about Among Us. I'm still very much not interested in it. And I wouldn't be surprised if all the hype around Among Us really is just a PewDiePie style effect and streamer effect, and wouldn't be surprised if people get bored of it in less than 3 months and never play it again. Gamma Sutra has an article. Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, the one who attained wealth main story trailer. This is for smartphones, so apparently Octopath Traveler is getting a cell phone version called Champions of the Continent. It's kind of the first I've heard of it. And here you have a giant boss creature against a large team of characters. Let's see if there's anything I want to say about the trailer itself. There's main boss character seems to be blindfolded and have a lot of skin showing, belly showing, and cleavage showing. But the actual trailer is just showing some very stationary RPG elements. I am a little confused as to why people like Octopath Traveler as much as they do, but I would be willing to play the Steam version of it and find out. Okay. This, and then evolve this. Then play this. And hit that. And hit that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Ball at Work, which seems to be a bouncing ball that's trying to get as far as they can in a level. Which, okay, that looks slightly funny, but I don't know if there's enough of a game here. It's kind of like a getting over it with Benet Foddy, but with a ball instead. Maybe with the 2D art style, maybe there is something that makes a little bit more sense. But the ball can't apparently just hit the ground, which seems kind of arbitrary. This is early access, it's free to play, it's English only. It doesn't have any in-app purchases. So I guess the price is right. So Ball at Work is one I would recommend if you're looking for a free game to play. And I don't need to go any further than that. I had a bunch of games left over, and I probably didn't curate any of them over the weekend. Here we have a what looks like Korean titled game with a bunch of random imagery for 99 cents. Yes, it was Korean. Next, we have a game on Steam here tagged with nudity called Absolute Alchemical Potion, and since it's tagged with nudity, I need to make sure it's YouTube family friendly. And it seems like it is, at least in the screenshots. It seems like it's a visual novel around some like demons. It looks like it's probably an otome visual novel because they're focusing more on guys than girls. $5.94, English and Russian. It doesn't look particularly interesting. Give everybody ward. Get fairies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Evolve. And kill. I don't know if that was the right way to do that, but I probably should have evolved and killed that one. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Gravity Kid, which looks like a low-effort student project game. Early access, $4.79, with 16 achievements. I don't think I want to create a phrase or a category of low-effort student project games. Let me just rephrase that and say it looks like a student project. I don't want to aspire low effort to student projects because it's very possible that someone who doesn't know how to program tried really, really hard and just ended up with a bad game anyways. I want to maintain low effort as a descriptor for people who are being paid and are in the profession. Well, I can do this. Yep, that's where I'm gonna end this. Let's see. Gimatsu has an article here. The Rio's Work Is Never Done has a opening movie now. I think the Rio's Work Is Never Done is I thought it was a shogi game. It'll launch for the PS4 and Switch on November 26th in Japan. I'll watch this intro, but not sure it's what I thought it was, because it is a shogi chess game, but it must have more cute anime characters in it than I thought they were gonna be, because I'm definitely seeing moe anime characters running around. and they are definitely fairly young looking moe characters, although there are also a lot of older looking characters too, so they seem to be going through the gamut there of just really young looking characters and really young or older looking characters, or perhaps better described as taller looking characters versus shorter looking characters, because that might be the real difference there. This thing keeps reducing the amount of damage it takes. It took forever. Next we have a game on Steam called Slide Stories Nico's Journey, which looks like a collection of slide puzzles with perhaps a animated screenshots, Nico meaning cat in Japanese, so it seems like you're focusing on a cat somewhat. This is 69 cents English only, so I don't fully suspect it to be quality by any means. And I don't know how you would really have a quality slide puzzle game in the first place. Right. Yeah, my only hope is to manage to... This guy has like 21 health. He's gotten more health than he should have, not less. Next we have a game on Steam called Agents, which looks weird, calling it an artificial intelligence experimental AI game. Visually, I just don't think there's enough gain there. It's $2.99 English full audio allegedly. I just don't see anything there, and once again I failed to succeed, and I'm not even willing to give it another go. We have a decent amount of games still to talk about, but I just need to focus. Here we have a game called Paranormal Stories, which looks like it's half investigative and half visual novel, kind of a hidden object game too from HH Games. They're saying match 3, $3.59. This might break out of the mold enough to justify putting it on the fall list, so I'm gonna do that, because none of these screenshots really are showing me anything that looks like a hidden object game. It does look like it's more of a match 3 game, which that's slightly different, very, very slightly. Next we have a game called Imurino, which seems like a Quap clone, and Getting Over It with Bene Fani clone, which literally I'm only going to play that one game ever in my life, like, and I'll probably rage quit even Getting Over It. This is $3.99 English only. That's too expensive for that kind of game. Let's see. Here you have CNET's hands-on with the Xbox Series X, and Jeff Bacala from CNET, who is kind of the only person I even know that does video games at CNET, was holding it, and then they jumped to another character that I don't even know who that is. It's really questionable for there to be a CNET games division and Giant Bomb and IGN. They were talking a lot about load times, so Here's a tweet where The Verge has compared load times compared to the Xbox Series X versus the Xbox One. Call of Duty Warzone took 16 versus 21. Red Dead Redemption 2 52 versus a minute 35. Other Worlds took 6 seconds versus 27, which goes to show that Other Worlds probably is not unpacking textures from a zip file in every load, whereas Red Dead Redemption 2 probably is doing a lot of that. Evil Within 33 versus 43. Sea of Thieves 20 versus 122. So you have the Outer Worlds, which is kind of a B-tier graphics game. Sea of Thieves, which is a B-tier graphics game. Warframe 25 versus a minute 31. Warframe, not really a B-tier graphics game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey 30 seconds versus a minute and 7 seconds. You're not seeing amazing progress here when you come from my perspective that there should be no loading at all. It should just be 0, 0, 0, or maybe 1 or 2 seconds. You're still going to end up waiting, just not as long, perhaps half as long. And maybe they have realized that they can't make games any bigger if they're going to have any load times like that. No Man's Sky is a minute and 27 seconds versus 2 minutes and 13 seconds, so that's still pretty bad. And Destiny 2 is 43 seconds versus a minute 52 seconds. Yeah, once again, it's worth me mentioning that I find it incredibly excruciating to wait for even a minute. I will habitually put in frozen burritos in my microwave, put in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and then get bored and pull it out at a minute, after a minute, and I will just eat the frozen. They're pre-cooked, but they are still frozen and slightly warm burritos. I would much rather do that than stand around for another minute. And boy, I really would love if they created a hyper microwave that would put like 5 seconds into it and just nuke the thing with actual gamma radiation to make it hot. But I think at a certain point there's the laws of thermodynamics slow down the process of heat transfer to a certain maximum. We may not be anywhere near it, but who knows. Here is another thing from IGN. There's only 802 gigabytes of usable space available. The rest is the operating system and system files, so nearly 200 gigabytes, which is actually quite a lot because I just installed like Windows 10 and you're pushing maybe 40 gigabytes on a fresh install of Windows 10. So the rest of that 160 gigabytes on the operating system for the Xbox Series X must be space for either screen textures, game textures, or something. Like there might be some reserve space for updates, but again, that should only be another 40. Even if you wanted just a full backup of so you could back up the operating system, that still would only be 160 if you assumed everything that I've just assumed was correct, which is probably not. So yeah, I have no idea why it would take up so much space. That seems ridiculous. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Cheap Game, which is just an infinite runner, and at least it's true to its title. It's 79 cents and it's English, but I don't know any reason why anybody would want to play that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Grim Shuffle, which is tagged as as cute board game, and I can't make out what these cards are, so I don't know if these are supposed to be anime girls or if I can't make out what they are, so I might be showing something that's not appropriate. I don't know if there's a real game here, though. 99 cents, English only. I'm gonna put this on the follow list and see if anybody reviews it and try to look at it closer to see what the images are. Generally speaking, though, it does kind of look like it is just a match 2 game. Here we have a game called Toupee 5-5 or Toupee 1955. Looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter, which we haven't seen too many of those. And it looks fairly asset flippy and not polished. For $2.99, English and Portuguese Brazil in the language. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article. Third-party app stores will be even easier to use on Android 12. Google shares vague plans for the next Android release. Frankly, they kind of need to do that. They need to allow for third-party app stores to cover their legal butts. Otherwise, they are going to get sued by people like Epic. That third-party app store TapTap, which Destiny Child, the cell phone game that I play, still a lot of, or I let run automatically in the background while I'm doing other things. That TapTap release of Destiny Child still hasn't happened, or at least I don't think it's happened. I didn't get any kind of notification or anything. Next, we have a game on Steam called Servers Down, which looks too much like a text-based game. Like, frankly, I might be willing to play something like this if it actually is some kind of simulation of trying to fix a server, just so I could show off. But at $6.99 English only, that's not worth it. Let's see. Learn new ways and commands to fix a broken Sergio. Giant manual, 300 pages for no reason. Share your feelings with chat friends. At least one. Daryl. Yeah. That's too expensive a game for a text-based game like this. And I don't think that this is actually a server simulator. So I'm gonna skip it. It would just be irritating to play something that pretended to be something it wasn't. Next, TechRaptor has a review for a game called Cyberhook, which just looks like a polygonal fly-around shooting game, which maybe you need VR for. Let's see what they gave it. I bet not much. 6.5. Cyberhook has an insanely satisfying core gameplay loop. Unfortunately, it doesn't have much else to offer. Pros are extremely fun core platforming and then intuitive visual design and a dizzying series of momentum. Cons are there's nowhere near enough content. Some levels feel frustrating when repetition sets in quickly. Okay. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Tech Pack, which looks like it is a collection of old games, but I don't think they actually are old games for $4.99. Actually, it doesn't even look like a collection. It looks like it's exactly one arcade game, and an uninteresting one at that. The Panzer Dragoon remake is rated very positively and it's already on my following list for $22.49. That's a fairly expensive game, but I don't see any reason not to just promote this to the wish list. At this point, it's following the rules. It's got more than 20 reviews. It's rated very positively. There's no way I could justify not putting it on the follow list. And it does look like it's a decent on-the-rails shooter Panzer Dragoon game that I've never played a Panzer Dragoon game or an actual Panzer Dragoon game, so I'd like to try that out. Next, we have a game on Steam called Genoseek, which looks like it is a Terraria clone with maybe some RPG elements and no actual building elements. This does have some polish more than the average game that looks like this, but it still doesn't look visually interesting enough for me to want to play it. It's free, and it's English and Polish, so check it out, I guess, if you want to. Gearbox Software at some point talked about having this game inside their game that was kind of like a folding at home mini game, and they clicked to a link here that I guess you might want to read. This is from Gearbox Software. Nature Biotechnical Journal showcases unprecedented success of Borderlands science in driving citizen science participation, and of course inherently it would claim massive success because the whole point was to drive more people to use the minigame to let their consoles act as servers for the science organization instead of the science organization having to fund the use of other servers. Next we have a game on Steam here called Harmless Demons, which I cannot tell what kind of game it is. It says it's a puzzle game. Maybe it's like a spin puzzle? Well, if I can't tell what it is, I have to put it on the follow list. $4.99 English full audio. It looks weird, but I cannot figure out what you actually do with the gameplay. So sorry for not being helpful there. Next we have a game on Steam called Cybernetic Fault, which looks like it might be a adventure game where you run around as a robot or something. I'm not sure that there is a full game here or if this is just an asset flip 5-minute experience. It's tagged story rich in 3D. Early access $7.64. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a full game here or if this is just a 5-minute experience, but I'll put it on the follow list. We've got some positive reviews. I'm gonna have to rethink whether positive reviews mean positive reviews anymore. Also, next we have a game on Steam called Propagation VR, and this, man, it's been a while since I've even seen a game that looked animated well that I'm shocked now to see something that actually looks like a game. And actual zombies, and not just asset flips, and actual lighting. And the giant spider was a surprise. Yep, it's a VR zombie shooter that actually looks like it's a good game. It's free. It's English full audio. I would recommend this. Now, what do I do with this? Do I put it on the follow list because it's a VR game? You probably still have a problem trying to play a VR game in VR, a VR zombie game, in the sense that you probably aren't going to move very far and you're just going to stand in one area and take a lot of damage and shoot a bunch of zombies, and then that'll be game over at the end of that, because yeah, there's not much else you can do. You really need the running and gunning aspect to do a zombie game, and you can't have running and gunning in VR. So they kind of conflict with each other. Next we have a game on Steam here called Realm of Altars, which is a collectible card game that looks like practically every other collectible card game. And it looked fairly pretty when I first looked at it, but you can see it's already mixed in reviews. It's early access, free to play with in-app purchases. It's English and Chinese languages. I played this game Cards and made a spotlight of it, but I think I lost the footage of that, so unfortunately there's not a lot to say there. It was definitely an interesting, different take on collectible card games, since most of them are based on fantasy, so having one based on World War II vehicles was nice, and it played slightly differently, but it didn't feel like it had enough content that people would really want to play it for a while. Even games against the AI have turn time limits, making learning difficult. Learning about each card is difficult because not all keywords are defined clearly at all. Yeah, I bet in English this game is a mess in the translation compared to the Chinese language. And yeah, not really looking for another collectible card game to play, but I should have a list of backups just in case. We're still waiting for Second Dinner, the Marvel card game from Second Dinner, to be made and put out. That's the next big one I plan on playing. And ideally I might be able to play that for a very, very long time. Next we have a game on Steam here called Fruit Factory, which looks like it is a singles Unity screen puzzle game, but there might be something to this. It's $9.95, English only. I'm gonna put it on the fall list to be generous. I probably am being too generous at that point. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Paint Girl, where you paint girls, and there's a lot of implied nudity you can kind of see from this image, but it's not tag nudity. It's English and Chinese, which you see that often happen, where you have these games tease you and imply that there will be lewd content, when in reality I don't think there really is any. And this one is really going far in that direction. It's rated very positive for $1.29, again English and Chinese. I am really losing confidence in the review system on Steam at this point. And it seemed to just happen over the weekend. All of a sudden games are starting to get massive amounts of reviews. Maybe Steam had a really tight restriction for fake reviews, and they're just not doing that anymore. Here we have a game called Sweet Halloween, which is a jigsaw puzzle game, and I'm hearing a chainsaw outside. Either that or my computer has just decided to ramp up really loud. Now that's a chainsaw at Weed Eater. $1.19, and that is like right outside my window. We've got two more things. Let's talk about it and then we'll wrap up. Next we have a game on Steam here called Marble Odyssey, which is a marble rolling game. These tend not to be great, but I'm gonna put it on the fall list anyways. It's $11.99, English only. Forget that, that's too expensive. That does not go on the fall list. And then we have a game on Steam called Gnomes and Goblins, which looks really pretty. Unfortunately it's already mixed, and if I'm gonna see a game that's already mixed, then, and I'm assuming that there's a lot of astroturfing happening now on Steam, that holds more weight, because if people are lying and putting positive reviews, then anything that has negative reviews is not good at all. This looks like it's a VR game too. For $29.99, English only, that's really too expensive. Alright. And then that brings me to the Humble Bundle and my Twitter feed, and I'm just going to try and burn through all of this fairly quickly. Do we have any new Humble Bundles? There's a Learn to Code book bundle, which, using the phrase learn to code, and for a brief second felt like it was going to become a new insult, but apparently that's been abandoned. It feels like a lot of phrases for a brief moment there were starting to be this ever-growing list of things that were getting labeled as slurs or insults, and at a certain point I think people have just put their foot down and going, hey, we're not gonna put the okay hand signal and smiley faces and every single generic thing that might be used by some person as in the same category as a swastika or something like that, which even swastikas are controversial to be censored or censorable banned imagery. Anyways, I don't want to get into a rant around that, so I am scrolling down my Twitter feed to see if anything else is worth mentioning, and then we're gonna fairly abruptly in the stream. It's been a long stream. Didn't see anybody on chat, so apologies if somebody did try to chat to me. TechRaptor has an article here. More PS5 pre-order delays reported at a UK retailer. I imagine we're gonna hear more about those kinds of delays kind of non-stop. Let's see. Xbox Hall of Fame has big prizes for dedicated gamers. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. That, in a weird way, my old account might have been a competitor for that, although probably not. I imagine while my account was very, very high in gamer score for the Xbox 360, I imagine over the course of the entire life of the Xbox One, people would have caught up and surpassed me by far. Yeah, I think I may have been too ambitious with the Twitter ad blocking too. I thought I had something good going there, but pretty much every page all of a sudden became too ambitious and is now having problems. The Twitter in particular seems to forget or miss some post. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.